The night Amariah Vale decided she was done with love, she sat on the bathroom floor with a bruised heart, a crying baby, and a silence so loud it felt like God himself had left her. But heaven hadn't gone quiet. She just hadn't learned how to listen yet. Amariah Vale had always believed love was supposed to feel like safety. Not like this. Not like the way her chest tightened every time she heard his keys at the door. Not like the way her voice disappeared when his grew louder. Not like the way she found herself apologizing for things she didn't even understand. That night, rain tapped softly against the window, but inside the apartment, the storm was louder. "Why are you always like this?" Marcus snapped, pacing the room like a man chasing something he could never catch. Amariah stood still, holding her 1-year-old daughter, Leora, close to her chest. The baby's soft cries mirrored the ache in her own heart. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. Marcus laughed, cold, sharp, cutting. "That's the problem. You never do anything right." Those words didn't just sting. They settled, deep, like roots of something poisonous. Amariah used to argue back, used to defend herself, used to believe she deserved better. But somewhere along the way, her strength had worn thin, and her silence had grown loud. "Maybe if you weren't so useless," he continued. "Stop," she whispered, but her whisper wasn't enough to stop the storm. It never was. Later that night, after the shouting turned into silence and the silence turned into distance, Amariah sat on the cold bathroom floor. Leora was finally asleep. The apartment felt empty, even though Marcus was still there. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she stared at her reflection. "Who are you?" she asked the girl in the mirror. She barely recognized her. The bright, hopeful girl she used to be was gone, replaced by someone tired, someone small, someone who believed lies. Her phone buzzed. It was Tasha, her best friend. Amariah hesitated before answering. "Hey," she said softly. Tasha didn't bother with greetings. "You're still with him?" she scoffed. "Honestly, Amariah, at this point, it's your fault." The words hit harder than Marcus ever could. I don't know how to leave," Amariah admitted. "Well, figure it out." "I'm tired of hearing about it," Tasha snapped. "You made your choices." Click. The line went dead. Amariah stared at her phone, then slowly set it down. That was the moment something inside her cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. Enough to realize she was completely alone. Or so she thought. She pulled her knees to her chest and let the tears fall freely now. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered into the quiet. "I don't know how to fix my life." Her voice trembled. "I don't even know who I am." And then, after a long pause, barely audible, "God, if you're real, I need help." The words felt strange, foreign, like speaking a language she had forgotten. But something shifted, not around her, but within her. A stillness. A pause in the chaos, as if heaven had leaned just a little closer. Outside, the rain began to slow. Inside, Amariah wiped her tears. Nothing had changed. Her situation was still messy. Her heart still hurt. Her future still uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, she had whispered towards something greater than her pain. And even though she couldn't see it yet, that whisper would change everything. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. If you see yourself in Amariah, even a little, know this: you are not too far gone. You are not too broken. And your story is not over. God meets people exactly where they are. Pain, confusion, and all. All it takes is a whisper. The next morning didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like survival. Amariah woke before the sun, her body stiff from sleeping in pieces. Leora stirred softly beside her, small hands reaching, trusting, needing. That alone was enough to pull Amariah out of bed, because no matter how broken she felt, she was still a mother, and that meant she had to keep going. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Marcus had already left. No note, no message, no apology, just absence. Amariah stood in the middle of the room, holding Leora on her hip, looking around at what used to feel like a life. Now it just felt like a place where her pain lived. Her eyes landed on the door. For a long moment, she just stared at it. Her heart pounded. Fear whispered, "Where will you go?" Shame added, "What will people think?" Doubt finished, "You won't make it." But then, something quieter, something she almost missed. "You asked for help." Amariah swallowed hard. Her grip tightened around Leora. "I can't stay," she said out loud, her voice trembling but real, and for the first time, she listened to herself. She didn't have a plan. No savings worth mentioning. No supportive friend waiting with open arms. No clear direction. Just a diaper bag. A few clothes. And a heart that had finally reached its limit. She packed quickly, hands shaking, folding what little she could carry. Each item felt heavier than it should, like she wasn't just packing things, but pieces of the life she was leaving behind. Before walking out, she paused. One last look. Not at Marcus, but at who she used to be in that place. "I deserve better," she whispered. It didn't feel true yet, but she said it anyway. Then she stepped out. The air outside was cool, fresh, unfamiliar. Freedom didn't feel like she expected. It didn't feel strong or victorious. It felt terrifying. Amariah adjusted Leora on her hip and started walking. No destination, just forward. Hours passed. A bus ride. A long wait. A lot of silence. Eventually, she found herself sitting on a worn bench near a small park. Leora slept peacefully in her arms, unaware of the weight her mother carried. Amariah looked around at people passing by. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go. A purpose. A place. She felt invisible. Forgotten. Now what? She murmured. Her voice cracked under the question, because leaving was one thing, but rebuild it, she had no idea how to begin. Her phone buzzed again. Hope flickered for half a second, then disappeared when she saw the name. Marcus. She stared at the screen as it rang. Her heart pulled in two directions. Answer, maybe he's changed. Ignore, you know he hasn't. The phone stopped ringing, then buzzed again. A message. Marcus, you really left? Wow, you're more dramatic than I thought. Don't come crawling back. Amariah read it twice. Each word felt familiar, predictable, and yet it didn't break her the same way this time. Something had shifted. Not completely, but enough. She slowly locked her phone and set it down. No, she whispered. Not this time. The sun began to set, painting the sky in soft gold and fading light. Amariah pulled Leora closer, pressing her cheek gently against her daughter's head. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted quietly. Tears filled her eyes again, but I know I couldn't stay. A breeze passed through the park, gentle and steady, and again, that quiet feeling, that presence she didn't fully understand. Not loud, not overwhelming, just there. Her eyes drifted to a small sign across the street. She hadn't noticed it before. A modest building. Simple, unremarkable, but the sign read, Come as you are, Sunday service 10 a.m. Below it, hope starts here. Amariah stared at the words. Something stirred deep inside her chest. Not certainty, not even belief. Just curiosity. A tiny spark in a very dark place. Hope, she repeated softly. The word felt unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. Night crept in slowly. Amariah stood from the bench, adjusting the diaper bag over her shoulder. She didn't have everything figured out, not even close. but she had taken a step. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. As she walked away, her mind echoed with a truth she didn't realize was beginning to take root. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. She didn't fully understand those words yet, but she was starting to live them, one uncertain step at a time. Sometimes the hardest step isn't fixing everything. It's leaving what's breaking you. If you're holding on to something that's hurting you, fear, a toxic relationship, a lie about your worth, consider this. What if letting go is where your healing begins? You don't need the whole plan. Just the courage to take the first step and trust that God can meet you there. The night felt longer than it should have. Amariah sat in a small, dimly lit shelter room, the kind with thin blankets and unfamiliar sounds, quiet sobs behind walls, footsteps in the hallway, the hum of lives that had also fallen apart. Leora slept curled against her chest, warm and peaceful. Amariah envied that kind of rest, because her mind wouldn't stop moving. What have I done? Where am I going? What kind of life is this for my child? She leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes, but the silence wasn't comforting. It was loud, loud with every regret, every harsh word spoken over her, every lie she had believed. You're not enough. You'll never make it. No one stays. She pressed her hand against her chest as if she could quiet the ache. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. And for a moment, it felt like the room swallowed her words whole. The next morning came gently, a soft light through the window, a quiet beginning. Amariah stepped outside with Leora wrapped close to her, breathing in the cool air like she needed to remind herself she was still here. Still trying, still standing. Across the street, that same sign. Come as you are. She stared at it again, this time longer. Her feet didn't move right away. Doubt crept in. You don't belong there. They'll judge you. You're not that kind of person. Amariah looked down at herself. Tired eyes, worn clothes, a life that didn't look anything like put together. Maybe they don't mean people like me, she murmured. But then her eyes caught the second line again. Hope starts here. Hope. There was that word again. Persistent. Gentle. Almost like it was calling her. She didn't realize she had started walking until she was already halfway across the street. Each step felt heavier than it should. Not because of distance, but because of what it meant. What if nothing happens? What if this changes nothing? Still, she kept going. The church doors weren't grand. No towering entrance. No overwhelming crowd. Just simple wooden doors slightly open, as if waiting. Inviting. Amariah hesitated at the entrance. Her hand hovered near the door. Her heart pounded. I don't know how to do this, she whispered again. But this time, she opened the door anyway. Inside, the atmosphere was different. Soft music played quietly. People talked in low, warm voices. No one stared. No one pointed. No one whispered. It wasn't what she expected. It felt safe. A woman near the entrance smiled gently. Good morning, she said. Not forced, not fake, just kind. Amariah blinked, caught off guard. Hi, she replied, her voice unsure. You're welcome here, the woman added softly. Those 3 words hit deeper than anything else. You're welcome here. Amariah nodded, unable to say much more, and found a seat near the back, close enough to see, far enough to leave if she needed to. The service began simply. A song, voices rising together. Amariah didn't know the words, didn't understand the rhythm of it all. But something about it felt real, raw, unpolished. Like people weren't pretending to have perfect lives. They were just bringing what they had. And for the first time, she wondered if she could do the same. Then the pastor stepped forward. No shouting, no pressure, just calm, steady truth. Sometimes, he began, God doesn't wait for you to have it all together. He meets you right in the middle of your mess. Amariah froze. Her eyes lifted slowly. Some of you walked in here today carrying pain no one else can see, he continued. You've been told you're not enough, that you've made too many mistakes, that your life can't change. Her chest tightened. It felt like he was reading her story out loud. But that's not what God says. A pause. Then, God says you are chosen, loved, redeemed, not because of what you've done, but because of who He is. Tears filled Amariah's eyes before she could stop them. She didn't even know why. Or maybe she did. Because no one had ever spoken about her like that before. The pastor opened a Bible. Listen to this, he said. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Amariah felt something break open inside her. Weary? Yes. Burdened? More than she could explain. Rest? She couldn't remember the last time she felt it. Her tears fell freely now, quiet, uncontrolled, real. She didn't try to hide them, didn't try to understand everything. She just sat there, letting the words reach places nothing else had. For the first time in a long time, the silence inside her wasn't filled with lies. It was filled with something else. Something softer, stronger, truer. A whisper. Not audible, but undeniable. You're not alone. Amariah closed her eyes, holding Leora close. I don't know you, she prayed silently, but I want to. The service ended without pressure. No one forced her. No one overwhelmed her. Just an open invitation, and a quiet peace she didn't walk in with. As she stepped back outside, the world looked the same. Same streets, same problems, same uncertainty. But she wasn't exactly the same. Something had started. Small, fragile, but real. She looked back at the church one more time, then down at Leora. I think we'll come back, she whispered. And as she walked forward, that whisper followed her, growing stronger with every step. Be still and know that I am God, Psalm 46:10. Sometimes God doesn't shout over your life. Sometimes He whispers. Through a moment, a place, a word you didn't expect. The question is, will you lean in close enough to hear Him? You don't need perfect faith. You just need a willing heart. Even a quiet I want to know you is enough for God to begin. The second time Amariah walked into the church, she didn't hesitate at the door. She still felt unsure, still felt out of place, still didn't know the songs or the rhythm of when to stand or sit, but something inside her had shifted just enough to bring her back. Not confidence, not certainty, just hunger. The week between her first visit and this one hadn't been easy. Faith didn't erase her reality overnight. She was still staying at the shelter, still stretching every dollar, still waking up in the middle of the night when Leora cried, and sometimes when she didn't. Still carrying thoughts that whispered, you're not doing enough. You're going to fail her. Nothing really changed. But now, those thoughts didn't go unanswered, because alongside them, something new had started speaking. Not loudly, not constantly, but clearly enough to notice. Keep going. You're not alone. I see you. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she couldn't ignore it either. That night, after putting Leora to sleep in her small crib beside the narrow bed, Amariah sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at her hands. I think I believe in you, she said quietly into the room. The words felt fragile, like they might break if she said them too loudly. But I don't know how this works. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know how to pray. Silence followed, not empty this time, just waiting. Amariah looked down, then slowly closed her eyes. God, she started, awkward and unsure. Then she paused. Her thoughts felt tangled, her emotions even more. So instead of trying to sound right, she just told the truth. "I'm tired." Her voice cracked. "I'm really tired." Tears slipped down her face, but she didn't stop. "I don't have everything figured out." "I don't even have anything figured out." She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "I'm scared all the time. I don't know how I'm going to take care of my daughter. I don't know who I am anymore." Her breathing grew uneven. "But I don't want to go back to who I was." That part surprised her. Because it was true. Even with all the fear, she didn't want her old life anymore. "I don't know if you're listening," she continued softly. "But if you are, I need help." She lowered her head. "No, more than that, I need you." The room stayed quiet. No voice from heaven, no sudden miracle. But something happened. Something small, yet undeniable. The tightness in her chest eased, just a little, like someone had gently taken some of the weight. The next day, she returned to the church earlier than usual. Not for the service, just to sit. The same woman from before noticed her and smiled. "Back again," she said warmly. Amariah nodded. "Yeah, I think I needed to be." "That's a good place to start," the woman replied. She introduced herself as Naomi. Not intrusive, not overwhelming, just present. They sat together in a quiet corner. "I don't really know what I'm doing," Amariah admitted. Naomi smiled gently. "That makes two of us." Amariah blinked. "You seem like you do." Naomi shook her head softly. "I know who I'm following." "That's different." That stayed with her. Naomi reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn Bible. "Can I show you something?" she asked. Amariah nodded. Naomi flipped to a page and turned it toward her. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Psalm 34:18. Amariah read it slowly. Then again. "Brokenhearted," she whispered. "That's me." Naomi didn't rush to respond. She just nodded. "And he's close to you," she said gently. Amariah swallowed hard. "It doesn't feel like it all the time." Naomi smiled softly. "Feelings don't always tell the truth. God's word does." That was new. Amariah had spent her whole life listening to how things felt. But what if truth wasn't based on that? "How do I get closer to him?" Amariah asked. Naomi's answer was simple. "Talk to him. Honestly, just like you've been doing." Amariah looked down. "Even when it's messy?" Naomi let out a small, understanding laugh. "Especially when it's messy." That night, Amariah prayed again. Not perfectly, not eloquently, but honestly. Every night after that, she kept going. Some prayers were quiet. Some were full of tears. Some were just one sentence. "Help me today." But slowly, something began to grow. Trust, not complete, not unshakable, but real. Days turned into a rhythm. Wake up, take care of Leora, search for small opportunities, return to the church when she could, pray when she didn't know what else to do. And in the middle of it all, she started noticing things. Not big miracles, but small ones. Provision at the right time. A kind word when she needed it most. Strength on days she thought she had none. One evening, as she rocked Leora to sleep, she whispered, "I think you're really there." Leora yawned, drifting off peacefully. Amariah smiled faintly. "And I think you're helping me." Her life wasn't perfect. Not even close. But it wasn't empty anymore either. Because now, when the silence came, it didn't feel so lonely. "Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Jeremiah 33:3. Amariah didn't have all the answers yet, but she had started asking. And that was changing everything. You don't need perfect words to reach God. You don't need a perfect life. or perfect faith. All you need is honesty. A simple, real prayer can open the door to something greater than anything you've been carrying alone. So if you don't know where to start here. God, I need you. And let him meet you right there. Growth didn't feel the way Amariah expected. She thought it would feel stronger, cleaner, more certain. But instead, it felt like a fight. It started quietly. A thought here, a memory there, a pull she couldn't ignore. By now, Amariah had begun building a rhythm, small, fragile, but real. She prayed. She read the Bible with Naomi. She showed up to church. She tried. And yet, the past hadn't let go of her. It was late afternoon when her phone buzzed again. She hadn't heard from Marcus in days. Part of her hoped she never would. The other part still remembered him. Still remembered the version of him she once loved. Still remembered how hard it was to let go. Her hand hovered over the phone before she picked it up. A message. Marcus, I've been thinking. Can we talk? Amariah stared at the words. Her chest tightened instantly. Her mind filled in the blanks. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he misses you. Maybe things could be different this time. But just as quickly, another voice rose up. Quieter. Steadier. Remember what you left. She placed the phone face down on the table, walked away, picked it back up, put it down again. The battle wasn't outside of her. It was inside. That night, she couldn't sleep. Leora rested peacefully beside her, but Amariah's thoughts were loud, restless, conflicted. She sat up, running her hands through her hair. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Her heart pulled in two directions, forward, toward healing, toward God, toward something new, backward, toward familiarity, toward what she knew, even if it hurt. She closed her eyes and prayed, not calmly this time, not gently, desperately. God, I need you right now, she said, her voice shaking. Because part of me wants to go back. The words felt heavy, but honest. I know it wasn't good for me. I know it broke me, but it's familiar. Tears formed again. And this new life, it's so unknown. It's hard, it's scary. She paused, breathing uneven. Please, help me choose what's right, not what's easy. The next morning, she found Naomi at the church. I need to tell you something, Amariah said, her voice tight with emotion. Naomi listened quietly as she explained the message, the temptation, the confusion. When she finished, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. Naomi leaned forward slightly. Amariah, she said gently, healing will always be tested. Amariah frowned. Tested? Naomi nodded. The moment you start walking towards something better, the past will try to pull you back. Not because it's stronger, but because it's familiar. That hit deep. I feel like I'm being torn in half, Amariah admitted. That's the battle, Naomi said softly. She opened her Bible and turned it toward Amariah. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12:2. Amariah read it slowly. Renewing. My mind? Naomi nodded. You've spent years believing certain things about yourself, about love, about what you deserve. God is teaching you something new now. But the old thoughts don't disappear overnight. Amariah looked down at her hands. So how do I win this battle? Naomi smiled gently. You don't fight it alone. That afternoon, Amariah made a decision. Not based on emotion, not based on fear, but on what she was beginning to understand as truth. She picked up her phone, opened the message, and typed slowly. Amariah, I can't go back. I'm choosing something different now. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled. Then she pressed send. Almost instantly, the reply came. Marcus, wow. Church changed you that fast? Don't act like you're better than me. Her chest tightened, but this time, It didn't break her, because she recognized something now. That voice, the one that once controlled her worth, no longer had the same power. She didn't respond, didn't defend herself, didn't explain. She just let it be. And for the first time, that felt like strength. That night she sat quietly, holding her Bible, not fully understanding all of it, but holding on to what she could. "I chose you today," she whispered. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. A quiet peace settled over her. Not loud, not overwhelming, but steady, like a foundation being built beneath her feet. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. 1 Corinthians 10:13. Amariah didn't feel unshakable. But she wasn't the same woman who sat on that bathroom floor anymore. Because now, when the battle came, she knew where to turn. Choosing healing isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily one. Sometimes even a moment-by-moment one. The past will call you back. Old habits will feel easier. But easier doesn't mean better. If you're in a battle right now, internally, emotionally, spiritually, remember, you don't have to fight alone. God gives strength, wisdom, and a way forward, even when it's hard. So today, ask yourself, what am I choosing? And if it's healing, keep going. The silence in Amariah's life had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. Now, it spoke. Not with noise, but with truth. The days following her decision not to go back to Marcus felt different. Not easier, but clearer. There was still pressure. Still moments where doubt tried to creep in. Still nights where fear whispered, "What if you made the wrong choice?" But now, she had something to answer back with. Amariah sat at a small table in the corner of the church one afternoon, her Bible open in front of her. The pages still felt new, unfamiliar, but no longer intimidating. Naomi sat across from her, watching quietly as Amariah traced a verse with her finger. "I keep reading this one," Amariah said softly. She looked up, then read it out loud. "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here." 2 Corinthians 5:17. She paused, her brow furrowed slightly. "I want to believe this," she admitted, "but I don't always feel new." Naomi smiled, not dismissively, but knowingly. "New doesn't always feel immediate," she said. "Sometimes it starts as truth before it becomes your experience." Amariah leaned back in her chair, thinking, "So even if I still feel broken, you're not who you used to be," Naomi finished gently. That stayed with her. Because for so long, her identity had been built on what people said about her. What Marcus said. What her old friends said. What her past seemed to prove. "You're not enough. You're difficult to love. You'll always end up alone." Those words had become her truth. Or at least, what she thought was truth. But now, something was shifting. Not outside, inside. Later that evening, Amariah sat beside Leora, watching her play with a small toy on the floor. Leora laughed, pure, free, untouched by the weight Amariah had carried for years. And suddenly, a thought hit her. What if she grows up believing lies about herself, the way I did? Her chest tightened. No, she whispered immediately. She couldn't let that happen. Wouldn't. That's when it clicked. If she wanted something different for her daughter, she had to live something different herself. Not perfectly, but truthfully. That night, Amariah took out a small notebook Naomi had given her. "Write down what God says about you," Naomi had suggested earlier. Even if you don't fully believe it yet. Amariah hesitated at first, then slowly began to write. "I am loved. I am not alone. I am chosen. I am becoming new." She stared at the words. They felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, but not wrong. The next line took longer. Her pen hovered over the page. Then finally, "I am worthy of healthy love." She stopped, her eyes filled with tears, because that one challenged everything she had ever accepted. "I don't know how to believe this yet," she whispered, "but I want to." Days turned into a quiet discipline. Every morning, she read something, even if it was just a few lines. Every day, she wrote something true, even if her feelings disagreed. And slowly, the lies began to lose their grip. It didn't happen all at once. There were still moments, still triggers, still thoughts that tried to pull her back into old patterns. But now, she noticed them, questioned them, answered them. One afternoon, while walking with Leora, a familiar voice echoed in her mind, "You're going to mess this up." Amariah stopped in her tracks. A few weeks ago, she would have believed that instantly. But now, she took a breath, shook her head slightly, and said, quietly but firmly, "No, that's not what God says about me." The words felt strange coming out of her mouth, but powerful. She kept walking, a little stronger, a little steadier. Later that week, during a small group at church, the pastor shared another scripture. "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. Amariah sat still, letting the words settle deep inside her. Freedom. That's what this was. Not just leaving Marcus, not just changing her environment, but being free from the lies that once defined her. That night, as she rocked Leora to sleep, she whispered softly, "We're going to be okay." Leora blinked sleepily, her tiny hand gripping Amariah's finger. Amariah smiled faintly, not because everything was perfect, but because something inside her was becoming anchored. "I believe you," she whispered quietly into the stillness. Not perfectly, not completely, but more than before. And that was enough. "For I know the plans I have for you," declares the Lord. "Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Jeremiah 29:11. Amariah didn't know exactly what her future looked like yet, but she was no longer afraid of it. Because now, she wasn't walking into it alone. The biggest battle you may ever fight is the one over what you believe about yourself. Lies can live in your mind for years, quiet, convincing, comfortable. But truth breaks chains, even if it starts small. So today, ask yourself, what have I been believing that isn't true? Then replace it with what God says, even if it takes time, because truth, spoken daily, can rebuild a life. Amariah's eyes moved slowly across the page as she continued reading. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. 1 Corinthians 13:5. She paused. Those words didn't just describe love. They challenged everything she had once accepted as love. Not easily angered, not self-seeking, keeps no record of wrongs. Her chest tightened slightly. Because if that was love, then what she had before wasn't. She closed the Bible gently, letting the truth settle. Not in a painful way this time, but in a freeing one. Because now she knew. She hadn't lost real love before. She had been rescued from something that only looked like it. The next few days passed quietly, but something inside her had become more aware, not just of Elias, but of herself, of her healing, of her boundaries. When she saw Elias again, it wasn't butterflies that filled her chest. It was peace, and that confused her at first, because she had always associated love, or even interest, with intensity, with nerves, with emotional highs and lows. But this felt grounded. They were organizing chairs after service when he spoke again. "You've been quiet today," he said gently. Amariah smiled faintly. "Just thinking. Good thoughts or heavy ones?" She let out a small breath. Both. Elias nodded, not pushing further. That was something she noticed about him. He gave space. "I've just been learning what love actually is," she admitted after a moment. Elias glanced at her, then back at the chairs. "That's a powerful thing to learn," he said. "Yeah," she replied softly, "especially when you realize you had it wrong before." There was no judgment in his expression, no curiosity that felt invasive, just understanding. "I think a lot of people do," he said. "I know I did." Amariah looked at him, slightly surprised. "You?" He gave a small, honest smile. "Yeah. I used to think love was about being in control, or being needed. I didn't understand what it meant to love like Christ." That caught her attention. "Love like Christ," she repeated. Elias nodded. "Sacrificial, patient, honest, not controlling, not damaging." He paused, then added quietly, "Real love doesn't pull you away from God. It brings you closer to Him." Amariah felt those words settle deep. Because if she was honest, her past had pulled her away from everything good. Away from peace, away from truth, away from herself. But now, she was being drawn closer. Not just to Elias, but to God. That night, she sat beside Leora again, brushing her soft curls gently as her daughter drifted to sleep. Her heart felt full, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was changing. "God," she whispered quietly, "thank you for showing me the difference." She paused, then added, "Help me not to settle for less again." Days later, during a small group discussion, the pastor shared another verse. "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness?" 2 Corinthians 6:14. Amariah listened carefully. Because now, she understood this wasn't about judging others. It was about protecting what God was building in her. After the group ended, she found herself walking beside Elias outside. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." She hesitated for a second, then spoke honestly. "How do you know if someone is right for you in God?" Elias didn't answer immediately. He thought about it, then said, "They won't replace your relationship with God." He looked at her gently. "And they won't compete with it either." Amariah felt peace wash over her, because for the first time, she wasn't looking for someone to complete her. She was learning to be whole in God first. And maybe that's why this felt different. Not rushed, not forced, not needed, just aligned. She smiled slightly as they reached the end of the path. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being different." Elias gave a small smile. "That's all, God." As Amariah walked away, she realized something she hadn't expected. She wasn't afraid of love anymore. Because now, she understood it. Above all, love each other deeply. Because love covers over a multitude of sins. 1 Peter 4:8. Not every connection is meant to lead you forward. Some pull you backward, some confuse you, some break you. But the right kind of love? It reflects God. It brings peace, not chaos. Clarity, not confusion. Growth, not damage. So ask yourself, does what I'm calling love look like what God describes? If not, you don't have to settle for it anymore. Better exists. And it begins with knowing your worth in Him. Healing didn't arrive like a sunrise. It didn't flood Amariah's life with light all at once. It came slowly, quietly, in layers. At first, she thought growth would erase the past, that once she prayed enough, read enough, believed enough, the memories would stop hurting, the fear would disappear, the doubts would fall silent. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, healing revealed what still needed to be healed. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Amariah was sitting in the park, watching Leora wobble through uneven steps, her tiny hands reaching for balance, her laughter bright and fearless. Elias sat on the bench beside her, relaxed, present as always. "You're doing a good job," he said gently. Amariah smiled faintly. "I'm trying." "You're doing more than trying." She looked down. Those words, they should have felt good, encouraging, but instead, they made something inside her tighten. "You don't deserve that." The thought came quickly, sharp, familiar. Her smile faded slightly. Elias noticed, not in a confrontational way, just awareness. "You okay?" he asked. Amariah nodded quickly. "Yeah, I'm fine," but she wasn't. Because even though her life had changed, some of the old voices hadn't left. That night, the feeling followed her home. She sat on the edge of her bed, Leora already asleep, the room dim and quiet. "I don't understand this," she whispered. "I'm doing better, so why do I still feel like this sometimes?" Her chest felt heavy, confused, frustrated. She reached for her Bible, flipping through pages until she landed somewhere she hadn't read before. Her eyes fell on a verse. "For the flesh desires what is contrary to the spirit, and the spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other." Galatians 5:17. Amariah read it again. Conflict, that's what this was. Not failure, not going backwards. A battle. The next day, she found Naomi. "I thought I'd be further by now," Amariah admitted, her voice heavy. Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Further how? I thought I wouldn't feel like this anymore." The doubt, the insecurity, the fear. Naomi nodded slowly, then said something that shifted everything. "Healing isn't instant. It's intentional." Amariah frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," Naomi continued gently, "God begins the work in you immediately, but walking it out takes time. You're unlearning years of pain. That doesn't disappear overnight." Amariah looked down. "So something's wrong with me?" Naomi's voice softened. "No, something's happening in you. That difference mattered." Later that week, Amariah faced something she didn't expect. Trigger. She and Elias were talking after church, laughing lightly about something small. It felt easy, safe. Then suddenly, his tone shifted slightly as he spoke more seriously about something. Not harsh, not angry, just firm. But to Amariah, it felt like everything changed. Her body tensed, her chest tightened, her mind raced. Here it comes. This is where it turns. This is where it becomes like before. She pulled back slightly, emotionally. Quiet, guarded. Elias noticed. Not with frustration, but concern. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked gently. Amariah shook her head quickly. "No, it's fine," but again, it wasn't. That night, she broke down. Not because of Elias, but because of what it revealed. "I thought I was past this," she cried softly. "I thought I was healing." But deep down, she realized something hard. Healing doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you respond differently to it. The next day, she made a decision. Instead of hiding, she would be honest. "I need to tell you something," she said to Elias, her voice slightly nervous. They sat outside again, the familiar place that had become a space of truth. "Okay," he said calmly. Amariah took a breath. "Sometimes, when things shift even a little, I get scared." She looked down at her hands. "My past, it wasn't safe. So now, even when something is safe, I don't always recognize it right away." There was silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just real. Then, Elias spoke. "Thank you for telling me. No judgment, no confusion, just understanding. I'm not him," he added gently. Amariah nodded, tears forming. "I know, but sometimes my mind doesn't catch up as fast as my heart wants to." Elias leaned forward slightly. Then we go at a pace where your healing matters. Those words. They didn't rush her, didn't pressure her, didn't dismiss her struggle. They protected it. And that's when it became even clearer. This wasn't just about love. This was about restoration. That night, Amariah prayed differently, not asking God to remove the struggle, but to walk with her through it. "Help me heal the right way," she whispered. Not fast, but real. Days passed, and slowly, she began practicing something new. Awareness. When fear came, she paused. When doubt spoke, she questioned it. When insecurity rose, she brought it to God instead of burying it. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, while reading, she came across another verse. Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. Amariah smiled softly, because that meant God wasn't done yet, and neither was she. She looked at Leora, sleeping peacefully, then whispered, "We're healing, step by step," and for the first time, she wasn't frustrated by the pace, because she understood something now. Fast healing can be shallow, but real healing lasts. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. If you're healing from something deep, don't rush the process. Don't measure your progress by perfection. And don't believe the lie that struggling means you're failing. Healing takes time. But every honest step forward matters. So instead of asking, "Why am I not there yet?" ask, "Am I still moving forward?" Because if the answer is yes, you're already on the right path. Love Amariah was learning was not proven in words. It was revealed in patterns, in consistency, in what remained when emotions settled. The more time she spent around Elias, the more she noticed something subtle, but powerful. He didn't just talk about faith, he lived it. It showed in the way he listened, not waiting for his turn to speak, not trying to fix everything, just present. It showed in the way he treated others. The same kindness he gave her, he gave to strangers. The same patience he showed in calm moments, he showed under pressure. There was no performance, no switching, just integrity. And that unsettled her, not in a bad way, but in a revealing one. Because for the first time, she wasn't trying to figure out someone's intentions. She wasn't analyzing mixed signals. She wasn't bracing herself for inconsistency. She was learning how to receive something healthy, and that in itself felt unfamiliar. One evening, they stayed late at the church after a community event. Most people had already left. The room was quiet, chairs half stacked, the soft hum of lights overhead. Amariah wiped down a table while Elias finished organizing supplies nearby. "You don't have to stay this long every time," he said. She smiled slightly. "I know, I want to." He nodded, understanding. There was a pause. Then Amariah spoke, more seriously this time. "Can I ask you something honest?" Elias leaned against the table slightly. "Always." She hesitated. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she was still learning to trust herself. What does love actually look like in a relationship that honors God? Elias didn't rush his answer. He thought about it, carefully. "It looks like choosing someone the way Christ chooses us," he said. "Not based on convenience, not based on emotion alone, but with intention." Amariah listened closely. "It's patient," he continued, "not rushing what God is still building. It's respectful, of boundaries, of healing, of timing. It's honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable." He paused, then added, "And it leads both people closer to God, not further away." Amariah felt something settle deep within her, because now she had a clearer picture. This wasn't about finding someone to fill a void. It was about walking alongside someone who was already being filled by God. "Can I be honest too?" she said softly. Elias smiled slightly. I'd expect nothing less. I think I'm still learning how to receive that kind of love, she admitted. Her voice was steady, but vulnerable. I'm not used to something being steady without strings attached. Elias nodded. That makes sense. No judgment. No pressure to be further along, just understanding. But you're learning, he added. And that matters. Amariah looked down briefly, then back up. I don't want to rush into anything, she said. I want to do this right, if it ever becomes something more. Elias met her words with calm clarity. I feel the same way. No disappointment, no urgency, just alignment. And that, more than anything, felt safe. Over the next few weeks, something beautiful began to unfold. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent moments. Praying together after long days, talking about scripture and what it meant in real life, laughing over simple things, encouraging each other through challenges. And through it all, Amariah noticed something new. She wasn't losing herself. In her past, love had felt like shrinking, like adjusting, like becoming less to keep someone else. But this felt like growing, like becoming more of who she was meant to be. One afternoon, as they walked through the park with Leora, Elias slowed his pace slightly. Can I share something with you? He asked. Of course. I've been praying about us, he said. Amariah's heart skipped slightly, but not from fear, from anticipation. And I don't want to move ahead of God, he continued. But I also don't want to ignore what he might be doing. Amariah nodded slowly. Okay. Elias looked at her, steady and sincere. I care about you. Not just as a friend, the words were simple, but intentional. And I see the way you're growing, the way you love your daughter, the way you're choosing God even when it's hard. Amariah's eyes filled slightly, not from overwhelm, but from being seen, clearly and gently. But I want us to continue building this the right way, he added, with patience, with prayer, with God at the center. Amariah took a breath, then smiled softly. That's what I want too. And just like that, something shifted, not into a rushed relationship, but into a shared understanding. This wasn't about feelings alone. It was about foundation. That night, Amariah opened her Bible again. Her eyes landed on a verse she had read before. But now, it felt different. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. 1 Peter 4:8. Deeply, not quickly, not emotionally, but deeply. She closed her eyes and prayed, God, if this is from you, let it grow the right way. Days turned into weeks, and their connection remained steady, not perfect, but intentional. There were still moments of insecurity, still moments where Amariah had to pause and remind herself, this is different. But now, she didn't run from those moments. She faced them, with God, with truth, with patience. And slowly, love stopped feeling like something to fear. It became something to understand, something to steward, something to honor. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky softened into gold, Elias looked at her and said, You know what I've noticed? Amariah tilted her head slightly. What? You don't carry yourself the same way you used to. She smiled faintly. I don't feel the same way I used to. Elias nodded. That's what God does. Amariah looked out at the horizon, her heart full, not of uncertainty, but of quiet confidence. Because now she knew, love that reflects Christ doesn't confuse you, doesn't break you, doesn't pull you away from who God is shaping you to be. It builds, it strengthens, it aligns. And for the first time, she was experiencing it. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Colossians 3:14. Not all love is the same. Some love drains you. Some love confuses you. Some love breaks you. But God-centered love, it grows you, it challenges you, it brings peace, not chaos. So take a moment and reflect. Does the love in your life reflect Christ? If not, don't settle. Because the right kind of love doesn't just feel good, it leads you closer to who God created you to be. The life Amariah lived now didn't look anything like the one she came from. And that was the point. It wasn't perfect. She still had responsibilities, still had moments of doubt, still had days where she felt stretched, tired, unsure. But the difference was, she wasn't lost anymore. There was direction in her steps, peace in her decisions, and most importantly, God at the center of it all. The shelter was no longer her home. Months had passed, and through a series of small, faithful steps, help from the church, a part-time job that turned into something stable, and relentless trust in God, Amariah and Leora now lived in a small but warm apartment. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Amariah stood in the kitchen one morning, sunlight pouring through the window as Leora laughed from the living room floor. That sound, it meant everything. Because it was no longer surrounded by chaos, only peace. She leaned against the counter for a moment, taking it all in. How did I get here? She whispered softly. And deep down, she knew the answer. God didn't just change her circumstances, He changed her. There were still reminders of her past, memories that surfaced unexpectedly, moments that tested her growth. But now, those things no longer defined her. Because she finally understood something that changed everything. Her identity was no longer rooted in what happened to her, but in who God said she was. Later that week, Naomi approached her after service. "There's something I want to ask you," she said gently. Amariah smiled. "Okay." Naomi hesitated for a moment, then said, "I think you're ready to share your story." Amariah froze slightly. "My story?" Naomi nodded. "There are people walking in here every week, broken, confused, carrying the same weight you used to carry." She paused, "And they need to know what God can do." Amariah's heart began to race. "I don't know if I can do that," she admitted. Her voice was honest, but uncertain. Naomi smiled softly. "You don't have to do it perfectly." She leaned in slightly. "You just have to do it truthfully." That stayed with her. That night, Amariah sat with her Bible open, her thoughts heavy, but not in fear, in purpose. "God," she whispered, "if you want me to do this, give me the courage." Her eyes fell on a familiar verse. "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here." 2 Corinthians 5:17. She smiled faintly, because that verse was her life now. The day came sooner than she expected. Standing at the front of the church, Amariah felt her hands tremble slightly. The room wasn't full. But it didn't matter. Even one person would be enough. She looked out, saw faces, different stories, different struggles, but something familiar in all of them. Brokenness. She took a breath, then began. "Hi, my name is Amariah." Her voice was soft, but steady. "A year ago, my life looked completely different." She paused. "Not to perform, but to remember. I was in a relationship that broke me. I believed things about myself that weren't true. I felt alone, even when I wasn't." Her voice wavered slightly, but she kept going. "I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to leave. And honestly, I didn't think I deserved better." The room was quiet, listening. But then, I reached a point where I couldn't do it anymore. Her eyes softened, and I whispered something I never thought I would say. She paused, then said it clearly. "God, if you're real, I need help." A few people shifted in their seats, not in discomfort, but recognition. And he answered, she said gently. Not all at once, not in a way I expected, but step by step, he met me. She shared it all. The leaving, the fear, the shelter, the first time she walked into church, the prayers that didn't sound perfect, the healing that didn't happen overnight. And then, she spoke about truth. I spent years believing lies about myself, she said, but God taught me something different. She picked up her Bible, opened it, and read, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. Her voice grew stronger. I am not who my past says I am. I am not what people said about me. I am who God says I am. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't hide them. And if he can do that for me, she looked out across the room. He can do it for you too. Silence filled the space, not empty, but full, because truth had a way of reaching people where nothing else could. Afterward, a few people approached her, not with praise, but with tears, with stories, with quiet Me Too's. And in that moment, Amariah realized something powerful. Her pain had a purpose. Later that evening, she sat outside with Elias. The sky stretched wide above them, calm and endless. "You were incredible," he said. Amariah shook her head slightly, smiling. "I was honest. That's what made it powerful," he replied. She looked at him for a moment, grateful, not just for him, but for what God had done in both of them. "I couldn't have imagined this life before," she admitted. Elias nodded. "That's usually how God works." She laughed softly, then grew quiet again. "Thank you for being part of this journey." Elias met her words with sincerity. "Thank God," he said gently. "He's the one who wrote it." Amariah looked out at the horizon again. Peace settled deep within her. Because now she understood. She wasn't just healed. She was called. Not perfect, not finished, but chosen. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. 1 Peter 2:9. Amariah had been in darkness once. Deep in it, lost in it, defined by it. But not anymore. Now, she walked in light, and she wasn't going back. If you followed Amariah's story, here's the truth. This isn't just her story. It can be yours too. You don't have to stay in what's breaking you. You don't have to believe every lie you've been told. You don't have to fix everything before coming to God. All it takes is a step, a whisper, a moment of surrender. Start here. God, I need you. And let him do what only he can do. Restore, heal, redeem. Your story isn't over. In fact, it might just be beginning.